Growing, smoking and owning small amounts of cannabis is now legal in the ACT, but it has to be done naturally. Hydroponic setups can't be used.
The fact that we can't cultivate under lights by law is really, it's quite ridiculous.
Those handcuffs have been released, and as such, now I can put them up in the air as an advocate and say, hey, look at all the positive things about this plant.
Hi, nice to meet you.
This is Mary's Medicine, a spread of handmade cannabis products she says provide life-changing treatment for her chronic depression and arthritis.
So we decided when the laws changed that it was time to take our power back and grow for ourselves and produce our own medicine at a lower cost in a healthier way.
Cannabis is decriminalised in the ACT, but Mary, that's not her real name, is risking a 2-year jail sentence by using artificial lights to grow the drug she relies on. She says it's the only way she can ensure a steady supply because it's just too hard to grow cannabis in Canberra during the cooler months.
Canberra climate is really not conducive to growing cannabis. We didn't realise to begin with how difficult this climate really is. That led us to actually making the decision to growing indoors, under lights, in a tent, which is against the law, and it's really tough emotionally to know that we're breaking the law to supply our own medicine.
Using a variety of oils, creams and edibles she makes from her harvests, Mary says her depression is in remission and her arthritis is under control.
So that one's used making an extraction. So it's called RSO, or Rick Simpson oil, and then I've mixed that into a natural arthritis cream base.
For nearly 2 years, cannabis use, possession and growing has been decriminalised in the ACT under strict limitations. Territory residents can possess up to 50 grams of dried cannabis and grow 2 plants per person, with a maximum of 4 per household. On paper, the laws clash with Commonwealth ones, but they haven't yet been formally tested in a court, and it's still possible ACT police could defer to federal laws at their discretion. And for some ACT residents like Mary, who the new cannabis laws don't protect anyway, the rewards outweigh the risks. Talking about the laws in the ACT as well, what is your assessment of where the cannabis laws stand right now?
The fact that we can't cultivate under lights by law is really, it's quite ridiculous. I can understand that they're trying to avoid commercial productions being more easily disguised as private use. Yeah, I think the police have enough initiative to say that's a personal use setup or that's a commercial setup. Why are they saying that you can only grow outdoors if it's for personal use? It seems ridiculous.
Could you go back to treating your medical conditions without cannabis, do you think?
To go back to those things, it makes me cringe. The toxicity of using those medicines is just incredible compared to using something that really has such little side effects. If I had to go back to the mainstream medicines, I would not like to think what it would do to my body long term.
This man, who we'll call John, smokes cannabis he grows under natural light to help relieve symptoms of post-traumatic stress. Could you talk me through how often you use cannabis and what effect it has for you?
So I use cannabis daily, and it has a calming effect for me. It also helps with trauma and me dealing with past trauma. I use it mostly in that regard. My mother unfortunately suffered from bipolar, and she committed suicide when I was about 7 or 8. Oh, I moved around quite a lot. My father was incarcerated when my mother committed suicide, so unfortunately the house that I went to just after that, it was sexually assaulted by family members, and been sexually assaulted since as a grown man about 6 years ago.
He says the new cannabis laws have had a positive impact on his day-to-day life.
I've definitely felt like an uplift, like less of a burden on my shoulders as far as I'm a criminal, and because this one plant does something good for me, and those handcuffs have been released, and as such now I can put them up in the air as an advocate and say, hey, look at all the positive things about this plant. It's had a really positive impact on my life.
Labor backbencher Michael Pedersen first introduced the new cannabis laws back in 2018. Although the laws protect recreational users, he says medicinal users should look to the Commonwealth, which manages the medicinal cannabis scheme, for reform.
It is helpful on one hand that these recreational laws are assisting these people, but ultimately the solution is for that Commonwealth scheme to be improved so people that are seeking medicinal marijuana can access it in a consistent way. For some Canberrans, growing their own plants is maybe a pleasant recreational activity, but for many people they're not gardeners. And so the supply system that is set up within this regime doesn't work for them. I understand those frustrations, however, our hands are somewhat tied here in the Legislative Assembly due to Commonwealth legislation about supply and trafficking.
Do you have intentions of adding the use of artificial cultivation to these laws in the future?
I've got no plans at this time. If I do, you'll be the first to know. There is a review of these laws that will take place in the next couple of years. I would encourage any Canberran that does have a view about how these laws could be changed to get involved with that process when it takes place.
Mr. Pedersen has more recently tabled a new bill calling for the decriminalisation of small amounts of illicit drugs like ice and heroin, which a special inquiry recently recommended should be passed into ACT law. He says it would be a vital step away from criminal prosecution and towards harm minimisation when dealing with drug use.
Right around the world, jurisdictions, both the subnational and national level, are having this debate. So I think Australia is very much at the start of this journey, and I think it's about time that we have an evidence-informed discussion about these substances so we can go about reducing the harm these substances cause.
Are you afraid of what position your actions are taking, or the means you're having to go to? Are you afraid that the position that's putting you in?
Oh, absolutely. They say cannabis causes paranoia, but these laws cause paranoia for me because I'm just doing my thing privately in my home, treating my medical conditions, and I'm breaking the law because of it. And it weighs really heavily on my mind, yeah.